YouTube. What's up, man? Got a new video today. This one is by Wall Street Journal. Deportation. We're gonna be talking about these illegals in America. I actually believe we should get them out of here. All the illegals should either be properly documented or have to leave, which means if you're here and you're just missing documents, if we can get you those documents, you can stay. But if you're here illegally, you gotta go. You gotta go. This is not the place for you to be. Go to Africa, go to Europe, go to China. But America is not the place where you're gonna sit here and just take advantage of our resources. Like that's not what it is. This is the land of freedom, but that's not what this is. Just because we're nice, we're stupid. You know what I mean? So we're gonna be watching this video by the Wall Street Journal. It says how Trump plans to deport 4% of the US population.
$315 billion. That's one staggering cost estimate for Donald Trump's signature campaign promise.
The largest domestic deportation operation
Let's go.
Conservative estimates.
Get him out of here.
Enormous. One group puts it at $162 billion. That's more than the government spent on most federal agencies in fiscal year 2024. We'll explain why an operation of this scale could require hundreds of billions of dollars over the course of a decade.
Hey, listen, man.
Is it your plan?
Wait, before, I know she about to ask something crazy. Look at her face. I don't care how much it costs. I don't care if I have to pay for it out of pocket. Get these illegal immigrants out of here. Notice I said the illegal immigrants, not the legal immigrants. I'm all for foreigners coming to America and enjoying what we have. But if you are in denial about the situation we have regarding these illegal immigrants, then you're just in denial. You're just gonna have to sit there and be in denial. But I don't care how much it costs. Let's get it done.
To deport everyone who is here illegally over the next 4 years.
Well, I think you have to do it. And
somebody has to do it. Somebody has to be the bad guy.
That means roughly 13 million immigrants who entered the country illegally are at risk of deportation, about 4% of the U.S. population. To put that into perspective, the entire U.S. prison and jail population in 2022 was around 1.9 million people.
Scale is difficult for the government to carry out.
Aaron Reichlin-Melnick is a senior fellow at the American Immigration Council, a liberal immigration group.
Trump would have to do more than quadruple current ICE removals of people arrested in the interior just to hit the levels that we've seen previously under Obama.
They say one step at a time, but think one step ahead. Watch your step. Step it out. We say
y'all never get hit with ads, bro. Like, what the fuck?
Your whole financial picture and path forward, all with Merrill.
I think that you take a sequential approach to it.
JD Vance, my boy.
Achievable. Let's start with 1 million.
The details of the plan are still being worked out, but let's say Trump does decide.
You heard what he said? You heard what he said? That's interesting. That's interesting. I like that strategy. Let's test. Let's do 1 million, and let's just see how that goes. Let's see if we need to do more or less. But let's just set a goal. The goal is 1 million. Now, once we get to this point, we know now. Okay, should we start doing less? Should we start doing things more affordable? Or we know now, should we do more? Can we do 2 million? Can we do 1.5 at a time? You know, so I like what he just said. That's very strategic.
Million people a year. That could still cost about $88 billion annually and take 11 years, according to one estimate. And that's assuming 20% of people would leave on their own.
Yes, it's expensive, but the trade-offs, I think, are well worth it.
Ron Vitello led the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency known as ICE for a year in Trump's first term.
Right now, the government is underfunded for its ability to detain people. To be able to accomplish this and the border mission simultaneously will require a reallocation, if not an infusion for resources.
Other immigration experts say the actual cost of Trump's mass deportation plan will be much lower than the American Immigration Council's estimate of $315 billion.
A more robust enforcement like the administration is contemplating
almost $500 billion.
Significant economies of scale.
Stephen Camarata is the Director of Research at the Center for Immigration Studies, a group favoring immigration restrictions that helped staff Trump's first term.
Once you start doing it and you get an infrastructure in place, then it might be a lot cheaper.
Deportation.
That's what I said. That's what I said. I said once you test out that 1 million, that's what I said, bro. I be knowing this shit. Once you test out that 1 million, now you know what to do. Now you know, hey, I can go further, or hey, I need to regress. I need to pull some back. But now you know, once the infrastructure is there, like he said, now you can navigate. But let's continue.
Targeted arrest. We'll know who we're going to arrest, where we're most likely to find them based on numerous investigative processes.
We're starting with the criminals, and we gotta do it. And then we're starting with others.
Trump says dreamers, or people who entered the U.S. illegally as children, might be an exception. To make arrests, ICE officers...
I think they should be an exception. If you're here, if you've been here since you were a kid, I think there's, you know what I mean? I think you should be able to just vibe out. I'm talking about people who came here after the age of 21. If you came here after the age of 21 and you have no proper documents, you shouldn't be here.
Would either identify someone who's already in a jail or prison, or go to a person's home.
The majority of undocumented immigrants are not in law enforcement custody. Most of them have never committed any offenses.
Arresting people out in the community, known as at-large arrests, isn't a common tactic for ICE. Vitello says it's more logistically complicated and more expensive, but it's at the center of the Trump administration's plan.
I'm not concerned that they won't be able to find them. It's just a matter of time, given the circumstances, given the availability of information, and given the resources in play.
At-large arrests often require multiple federal agents and take several days because ICE officers don't generally have warrants.
Immigration violations are not criminal, which means that a judicial warrant to arrest them would not have probable cause. They might have to wait hours for the person to leave their house. They might have to stake out a work site.
To carry out arrests at this scale, the American Immigration Council estimates ICE would need to hire over 30,000 new law enforcement agents and staff, making it the largest law enforcement agency in the federal government.
Hey, listen. Damn, why is that required though? Like, that's crazy. The immigration is so bad that we have to focus on ICE. Like, that's crazy. How do they get to this point? But anyway, it don't matter.
Hello says this number
forgot
is
what I was gonna say.
overstated, and that state and local law enforcement
How to get to this point, man?
task forces to help with at-large arrests, something they already do.
Having that referral system, having state and locals help ICE officers do their job. Better to have it than not, but not definitive in whether they do the work or not.
Then there's detention, the most expensive part of the whole process. It costs around $200 a day to hold someone in ICE custody. Congress has provided enough funding for at least 41,500 detention beds in fiscal year 2025. But that's not nearly enough to detain 1 million people a year. According to the American Immigration Council, ICE would need to construct 216 soft-sided facilities every year for 11 years. Soft-sided facilities are temporary tent-like structures that have typically been used near the border. Anyone not physically detained would be placed on electronic surveillance, which costs approximately $4 per person per day. Private contractors involved in every stage of the detention process could drive up prices even more.
Contractors drive people in between ICE detention centers or drive the vans after somebody's arrested.
Detaining children would also make this process more expensive.
I don't want to be breaking up families, so the only way you don't break up the family is you keep them together and you have to send them all back.
Get the whole family
Detention
gone.
is
I like
the
that.
most expensive kind of detention because the U.S. government is required to give people minimum standards, and those children need to have child welfare professionals on site. They need to have pediatricians on site. There needs to be a provision for them to get schooling if they are going to be held for months or potentially years at a time.
Vitello says one way the government could reduce costs is by repurposing.
So even though, let me speak on it. Even though they're here illegally, we are still responsible for their development? Even though they came here illegally, we're responsible for their development. I don't think so, buddy. I don't think so, buddy.
Existing detention centers like Guantanamo Bay.
A third country like a Panama, potentially Mexico, could agree to hold third country nationals so that their due process could be adjudicated, thereby lowering the costs and kind of sending a message down the pipeline that people are not going to be released into the United States to await those adjudications. That alone will reduce the number of individuals trying to cross the border illegally.
Camerata says there are over 1 million immigrants who could be detained at a much lower cost.
There are people with a final order of removal that we just never made leave. Those individuals shouldn't have to be held long. We can get them out very quickly.
After detention,
Shawty cheeked up,
process,
damn.
which immigration law experts say is the biggest bottleneck in the mass deportation process. An additional 10.6 million cases would require nearly 2,000 more immigration judges and over 1,100 more courtrooms.
There is not only a cost in the immigration court side, but there's also a cost in the ICE side in getting these new prosecutors online. You need support staff for the judges, judicial law clerks, secretaries.
Staffing on both sides leads each case to cost over $2,500. To set up new courtrooms quickly, the government would likely construct tent courts, like those built in 2019 to implement the migrant protection protocols. This was when immigrants living in the U.S. illegally were returned to Mexico to wait for the duration of their court proceedings. They went to tent courts near the border to virtually appear in front of judges.
You could do those hearings much faster, logistically get more judges and more hearings heard in a day.
As with finding new efficiencies in the detention space, that is another thing that has its limits.
Tent-style courtrooms in Laredo, Texas, cost about $16 million to build and $143 million annually to operate. Once a person receives a final removal order, they have to either report for deportation at a later date or wait in detention until then.
At that point, the U.S. government has to actually arrange the removal. That would involve putting them on a bus and sending them to Mexico, but if they're from any other country other than Canada, that means putting them on a plane and flying them to their ultimate destination.
An operation of this scale could require over 6,000 removal flights per year. For comparison, ICE had around 1,200 removal flights in fiscal year 2023. The average ICE removal flight costs about $17,000 per hour. This number could go up if private contractors who provide ICE with planes and pilots raise their prices.
But there are other assets, right? ICE has a number of its own aircraft that are already in service today. The Justice Department, the Marshal Service, has their own transportation aircraft. The scale-up need could come from the military.
Trump told NBC News in November that there is no price tag for his plan. Camerata says the cost will likely be spread out over several years because it would be impractical to deport even 1 million people a year, let alone all 13 million in a single one-time operation.
In this case, it's probably hyperbole. What I think he's trying to do is tell everyone, when I take over, the immigration law is going to be back in business. And I think it's going to have a big effect. And then it's going to be up to the public to judge.
On what, though?
But getting enough funding from
There's going to be a big effect on... Let's get this video over with real
Congress
quick.
will be crucial for an operation of this magnitude. Senate Republicans have said that passing a border funding bill will be the top priority next year.
Border security, more bed spaces so you don't have to release people that shouldn't be released, and more ICE agents to deport people who represent a threat to our country and shouldn't be here to begin with.
Republicans control both chambers of Congress next term, but it's a narrow majority, making spending on this scale no guarantee.
To my Democratic friends, I think if you resist rational deportation policy, you do so at your own peril.
WGU offers more than 40 real-world ready.
Alright, man. That's it. How do y'all feel about... Let me know what y'all in the comments. How do y'all feel about immigration? Like, do y'all feel like it's a good thing? Do y'all feel like it's a bad thing? Do you feel like we should be allowing these foreigners to come into our country? I don't believe all of them are committing crimes. I don't even believe a majority of them are committing crimes. But I do believe that if they are going to be here, they should be documented legally. Because America is a beautiful place to be, and we offer a lot of resources, and we want to make sure those resources are distributed fairly amongst people. And if you're here illegally, then it's not fair to the people who are here legally, who are here doing what they're supposed to be doing. So there's that. Let me know what y'all think in the comments. Y'all agree, y'all disagree with Hudro Reacts, man. I'm out. Peace.